Hello and welcome to We Will Manage, the podcast exploring the weird and wonderful world of work. We are two young professionals figuring out our careers one conversation at a time. Today, we're talking about building your team.
So stick around to find out about the benefits of an invisible team, the guilt that comes with hiring for the first time, and the dark side of team building. Today, I went and I picked up my first, I don't know what you call it, basket of vegetables that I've subscribed to that are grown in a little farm.
I love this
just
so
over the
much.
other side of Lausanne. And I've got a picture.
Oh, I love it.
I'll just show you on the screen. We can probably put it up. So this is all my vegetables.
Oh, yeah, we'll share it on socials. It's so cute. I love it. I love it. I'm so jealous.
It was so sweet and the people were so nice. And tomorrow morning I'm going to go, because tomorrow is a national holiday here. And so
Do you get a day off?
Yeah.
As you said it.
And so instead of working in an office, I'm going to go and work on the fields to help with the vegetables.
Fabulous.
Because then I get to see where the vegetables are grown. I get to help
it's
out.
so cool.
I love
So
it.
cool.
So yeah, this is my new vegetable life. Anyway.
Have you picked up the first one today because it's a seasonal thing, so it didn't start till this month, or
It started at the beginning of the month, but I wasn't subscribed yet. And then I went to see them last week because they one of the points where you can pick it up is literally the building across from mine.
Wow.
Which is amazing. And so I went and I chatted to them and I was like, oh, tell me about what you're doing. I made them do a little pitch. And it was so funny because as they were speaking, I was like, they're not used to pitching. They're farmers.
That's so cool.
But yeah, no, it's lovely association. So basically everybody subscribes. And then if there are loads of vegetables, then that gets split between everybody. And if there aren't very many vegetables, then that gets split between everybody. So you're like helping out and paying the same no matter how much is like actually picked. So it's a really nice way to do it for the farmers.
Yeah.
Like it's not their fault if you have a rainstorm and your vegetables die.
Yeah.
Whatever. But yeah,
when I
it's
said to
really
my
cool
dad
people.
that he should mass his vegetable garden, he was saying that. He was like, no, because it's too much stress that, like, if for whatever reason one of the plants doesn't do as well, so you haven't got as much produce, and then people are paying for a subscription or whatever, like, it's too stressful to, like, be able to guarantee you're going to be able to give the amount that you say. So yeah, that is a very nice way around that.
Yeah. I feel like maybe it works better in Switzerland than it would do in the south of Spain.
Well, yeah, that was another thing. He was like, if he
As in,
had
like, people
water,
are risking money per se, you know?
yeah. Well, and also the issue with water. He was like, if like to not do
Yeah.
it all year round, like, I never know, depending on how much water we get, then, you know, how much I'm going to be able to plant. And then if I plant loads and then there's no water and then I can't, you know, it's too many unknowns. But yeah. Anyway, this is not a podcast about vegetables.
Unfortunately, I think we should definitely make a podcast about vegetables. That's a
Definitely
whole
should.
different subject that I want to talk about. Is like,
Just food.
like where we buy our food and how important it is in what we consume to how healthy we are and how we feel. And like, anyway,
Totally.
we can go into that in like maybe a mini episode that has nothing to do with work, but a lot to do about balance. So
Balance
yeah,
and
maybe.
how you feel and everything, mood and everything. So yeah. But
So
today's
what is the
episode-
topic?
It's all about building a team. So when I saw this, I was a bit like, okay, not sure how I'm going to expand on this, but actually what always happens has happened, and now I don't know how we're going to fit it all into one episode. I did also see that we've got various episodes that are kind of similar vibes coming up. So I think the next one is, well, I don't know, I'm not going to say the next one. There's one about working with friends and family, and that was kind of getting touched on in this episode, so that's been left. There was also another one about kind of working by yourself versus in a team. So there's other ones that are so I was like, okay, I'll try not to dive into those topics today.
Okay.
And leave them for another
So little
day.
teasers for next episode.
Yes, exactly.
I like it.
So I thought we saw each other in person not that long ago. And we recorded our second mini episode, which if I was really organized, I would know if that's come out yet.
Because Alba's such an unorganized person, guys. Honestly, the most unorganized person I know.
But I don't know if you guys have seen that one yet or not. If you have, then congratulations. If you haven't, then a little teaser is that it's a episode to get to know us a bit more, because we did do an episode about us, but we did a little quick fun game of Would You Rather, business edition, but with a little bit of spiciness in there. So it inspired me, and I thought it might be fun to start off today's episode like that. So we're going to do a Would You Rather team edition.
Oh, I like it.
Just very quick, to get us in the mood. So, Saoirse, would you rather hire someone super skilled but bad vibes, or someone who's eager to learn but inexperienced?
So, does this have to be a quick fire, or can I elaborate?
Tell me, answer, and then you can elaborate.
Okay. The second option, somebody inexperienced but
eager.
What was it exactly? But eager. Yeah, eager to learn.
Eager to learn.
It's actually really good timing for me, this episode, because
Nice.
last week I went through a whole series of interviews, because we're currently hiring an intern for our startup, so our tech company, and we're hiring an intern for an internship within the company for a few months, and then followed by they will be doing their master's thesis, which is a scientific project within the lab that we work with on our project. So it had to be somebody, and then the idea being that this is somebody that is eager to work on the project, that is motivated by the mission of the project, and that ideally, since you're putting time into this person, maybe after their master's thesis, they could be hired. Maybe they could be a good addition to the team. So we had to ask ourselves this question. Exactly. Somebody I can delegate to.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's really good timing, this episode, because we've had to ask ourselves that. Do we want somebody that seems very experienced and very technical and has had maybe a lot of company experience, or just somebody that's really eager to learn? And we definitely went for the second option. I feel like, it depends on the kind of job you're looking for somebody for. Yeah. But if it's just an addition to your team, I think anything technical can be learned.
Yeah.
Whereas the eagerness and the proactivity and the ambition and the good vibes, and wanting to learn and figure things out, I don't think that can be learned.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, but unfortunately it doesn't seem to be the case, because it is so hard to get that first job out of university when you are full of eagerness and energy, but zero experience, because everyone says that you have no experience, and it's such a tricky situation. So yeah, even though I completely agree, I think a lot of people don't. A lot of people who are in charge of hiring, don't have that same outlook. It depends on the position, I think. But
it is an investment, isn't it, that you're putting into training that person.
Training somebody. Yeah.
For the guaranteed feedback. Anyway.
Yeah.
Next.
Anyway, next one. Would you rather build a remote team or an in-person team?
Ooh, I feel like originally I would say in-person team, but after our workplace dynamics episode, you kind of gave me all of the pros of remote.
Again, it depends on the position, because there are some positions you use. For example, working in a lab, people have got to be able to come into the lab to work. So, but what would you rather if you could choose?
That's a really tough one, because I like the idea of being able to offer anybody the opportunity, no matter where they are, And then if I had like a load of budget, then I would hire a remote team and then make sure that we're able to meet up at least once a month, and we meet up and actually get to know each other. And I'd have to make sure that there was some kind of company culture construction, that we do also chat and stuff and meet up online.
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, really, because I mean, the idea is also a nice one, to think of building a team that you are going to be surrounded by every day.
Supported. Yeah.
So I switch my answer. I say in person.
I was convincing, but not convincing enough. And the last one is, would you rather pay more for talent or take a chance on someone cheaper? So basically, would you go for someone who's charging more but has kind of the stuff to back it up, and you're like, wow, they are really good at what they do, or cheap out a little bit?
I don't think you should cheap out. I mean, if you get somebody more junior, it's kind of comes back to the question before, but they seem eager and seem like they can learn, then I don't think that's cheaping out. Whereas I think if you're comparing two similar experience roles, and one is just cheaper than the other, I don't think it's a good idea to cheap out. Better to spend the extra money and get real quality, because I mean, a company is purely the team. It's 90% the team, and then 10% whatever you're selling. So I don't think you should cheap out on employees, and I think it's really important to pay your employees enough for them to be comfortable, for them to want to stay, for you to then get the best value out of them. Yeah.
I agree. So, yeah. Right. So let's dive in. Now we've set the mood a bit. So first I just want to talk a little bit about why you might need a team, why this is something to be considered, especially you can be starting out as a team, or you can be starting out as a solo person, founder, whatever, and then wanting to build one. So if you are in that situation, maybe a reason you would need a team would be because you've hit capacity. You just can't take on any more work alone, and you want to be able to take on more work, or be able to expand the project you're working on, whatever. So you literally can't do any more by yourself. Another reason kind of leads back to the same thing. You just want to grow or scale. So you maybe are doing good, but you know that if you do get more team members involved, then you will be able to maybe not even grow more, as in you're thinking more clients, but maybe just be able to expand what you can offer as a company. Another good reason, which is something that I've kind of been just kind of like thinking about, I guess, recently, is needing complementary skills, not just a duplicate of you, which is something that we're also going to talk a little bit about today. Because you might be the best at what you do, but in whatever you're working in, you need someone to be able to kind of support you in other areas. And then also because maybe just for your mental health, because maybe you're just feeling burnt out. Maybe you are doing okay alone, which was kind of my situation. I could have not hired someone last year, but I decided to because I was just feeling so stressed all the time. So I decided to delegate a part of my business that I wasn't particularly enjoying, with the hopes that then we would be able to take on more work as well, of course, but it wasn't the main reason. Would you have anything else to add to that list? That was kind of
I think that's really well covered. I think part of it, like you say, can definitely be just simply having somebody else to bounce ideas off of. Like working within the team, in my experience, even though you might be very good at something and you might be particularly good at making decisions on whatever subject, just having somebody else, and ideally with a slightly complementary mindset or vision or experience, it adds so much value to be able to bounce those ideas off of them, and also kind of backs up your decision a little bit. Like you take a little bit of the pressure off yourself, saying, okay, at least I got validation from my one team member or my whole team, It's like, okay, it's not just
like an
me.
opinion.
I'm not. Yeah, exactly. I think that's a big part of it. And I think it's really interesting and something I've been thinking about a lot, the first thing you said, which is either you work and work and work until you can't work anymore and you have to hire someone, or do you anticipate that and take the risk of hiring someone without being like sure that you have the income to pay for their salary, with the objective to then be able to grow?
It is definitely something, and I've met entrepreneurs of both at both ends. Actually, someone that I may be working with soon, they're at this point of they've hit capacity, and the hours they are working at the moment are actually ridiculous, but they're scared to take somebody on. And today we're going to touch on all this kind of stuff, because the traditional hire somebody isn't, like, traditional way of like building a team isn't the only way to build a team. So I'm very excited to get into that. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about when you are going to hire somebody or get somebody onto your team, the things that I think you maybe have to be clear on, and it's actually things that especially this first one, is something that we actually work very closely with our branding clients, because we know it's so important for our team to function. And that is to be really clear on what your values are. The skills that people have are obviously important, but I feel like shared mindset and values is very key to make sure that everything runs smoothly. And like I say, one of the first
to make sure
things
everybody's working in the same direction.
With the same kind of motivation, It's when we do a branding project, values is always such a big part of the whole thing. Like, what are the values? And from that, we then build everything because it's so important. And actually, you said something to me the other day when you were saying about interviewing someone, and it was actually a funny story, but you said that one of the questions you were asking people was about what place did sustainability have in their lives, because that is something that you guys would value, and it's something that for you it's important that, you know, people would align on that before coming into the company. So I think when you're looking at expanding the team in any way, I think be very clear on what your values are, so that you can make sure that people coming in are aligned with that. I think so important. And then another thing, I think, basically to define the role very well. So the amount of horror stories I've had from friends of they've started a job with a title and that's not at all what the job ended up being, or maybe it's a small part, but it ended up being 1,000 other things as well. So I think as the person looking to build a team, are you looking for people to help with the work? So it's more like collaborative? Is it more for the work? So is it more like support staff? Is it, you know, what is it happening? Because what's happening when this person is coming in? Because if not, if it's vague, it's going to just be chaotic for everyone.
It's a really good point. Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting subject because it's so difficult. I mean, if you're in a very structured company and you have a very defined role that you're looking to fill, that maybe is filling somebody else's place, or you're creating a new department or something like that, then you can like set out, you know, the objectives and the goals and what you're in charge of. And then on the other side, I think it depends a lot on, so for example, when we're looking for this new person for our team, when we have the conversations with them, we give them as specific kind of characteristics of their role as possible, but also say
what
to them,
you can expect.
Look, this is a startup. You will be working a little bit on everything. And I think that has its charms, and it's not for everyone.
If you know that,
as long as we say it, yeah.
If you know that that's the kind of job you're going into, and that it is obviously, like you say, the smaller the company, the more hats the few people that are there have to wear. The bigger it is, and the more you can say, okay, we're getting one person just to answer our emails.
Yeah.
That at a startup is never going to happen. So yeah, obviously, but I think just, be very clear on that, like you say,
Yeah.
when you're putting out that job offer. Again, just to make sure that teamwork does then, is smooth and works in a way that everybody's just aware of what they're doing, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something also that we went through recently for the established company that I work for. Is there's not that many of us like working all the time. There's maybe like four people, and then we have other people that work a little bit here, a little bit there, like commercial agents, blah blah blah. But even then, it wasn't super clear who was in charge of what on certain subjects, and those subjects were more likely to have issues, because if you don't know who's in charge of it, you're either overworking and overlapping, or you're both going, oh, that's your job, and oh, that's your job, and then nobody's doing it.
Yeah.
Or you're doing it and you think that you shouldn't be because you don't think it's your role, and then you get frustrated and blah 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 blah. So we had to
Absolutely.
like redefine everybody's roles really clearly to make sure everybody was happy and working better together and everything.
Yeah. And that also is with what we were saying before about to hire people who are complementary to you, because that's what leads to balance. Because if you just get people that are exactly like you, have the same skill set as you feel like, oh, this is someone that I'm connecting with so well because we have so much in common. But that's going to lead to gaps, not a balanced kind of team
Dynamic.
a dynamic. That's the word I was looking for. So yeah, I think that's definitely needed. And then going from kind of just the general to the more specific, I want to talk a little bit about first hires. So like we were saying about when you do hit that capacity or you're looking to grow, etc. How do you kind of navigate that? Because it can be tricky. And I think the biggest thing can be when it is just either just a solo founder, or even when it is a couple of people who have founded something together. I think it's can feel like your baby, your company and your business, and kind of giving up that control, it feels like, can be so difficult to like get someone else in. But as we've talked about a lot on this podcast, micromanaging obviously isn't conducive to being a nice workplace to be in. So I think you have to be very aware of that when doing your first hires or collaborations or whatever. To be aware of, okay, this is something I want to grow, and for it to grow, I have to let it go a little bit, and not.
Yeah, I mean, delegating is so hard. Especially, I think that the type of person that tends to found a company, it's the type of person that is often finds it difficult to delegate, because you're probably a little bit perfectionist. You get the work overwork to get it perfect, to get it done, and delegating is really difficult. I've struggled with that. But yeah, I think we kind of touched on that in our interview episode. I mean, easier said than done, but definitely the best way to go is to take the time to hire somebody that you trust, and then trust them. Trust them until they give you reason not to.
Yeah.
And then that trusting them, it empowers them to, get the job done. It's their responsibility. They take responsibility, and then it's just the most value you can get out of someone. Not micromanaging them.
Not micromanaging. Exactly.
Don't micromanage.
Never micromanage. And then another way so when you are looking at that first kind of step, you can have the traditional kind of employee, somebody who you're going to bring in and they're going to be working X amount of hours and you're going to be paying them a fixed wage, and that's how it's going to be. There's also kind of, I think it's called, I was looking it up because I thought this was just something very specific, but apparently it is also just a general term, which is contractor. So it is when you get an outside person to do what you can't manage to do for whatever reason. So this, you see it very often with things like social media agencies. You don't have an in-house social media department. Marketing agencies, you don't have an in-house. Obviously, these are all the kind of things that bigger companies do, just all do in-house, do all themselves. But when you're starting out, if you can, instead of hiring that employee, which,
Full
like we
time,
were saying, is a big commitment, because you don't know if you're going to be able to pay them 100% sure, you know, they're whatever you're going to be paying them a month. So maybe looking into contracting other companies, agencies that can take on some of that work is a good option. I work a lot with people like this. Obviously, I'm normally the person that gets contracted out. If that's how you say that. And I think it can also be very enriching experience. I think when they are long term, if it's just one project, not so much, but when it's long term, this is definitely, I believe, another form of team. Because you're working with people very often on a daily basis on projects that align. It's not everything that you're working on, because like I say, it's normally they're getting you in for one specific thing, but it does also lead to a team dynamic, because it very quickly stops kind of feeling like a client and does feel like someone that you're working with to achieve this common goal, whatever it may be. Like I say, this is normally more with long-term projects, monthly projects, whatever. But yeah, I think that's a good
contract
option.
like this kind of setup is, I kind of discovered it relatively recently. So like in the last year, I'd say. And it's actually super, super common for engineers as well.
Oh, really?
So like when you put your CV on a website, I know this happens especially in France. When you put your CV on the job websites, you get so many companies that contact you that are like companies that are in charge of this process. So they build a team of profiles that they can then contract out to companies.
Wow.
So they'll place those engineers for 6 months here, for 1 year here, for 3 months here. And it can either be something like online, where you go and see the client once a week and then you work separately, or you're actually placed at that company for that amount of time at the offices, you know?
Yeah.
And it's super interesting as a setup. I'm not sure. I mean, these companies, the cool thing is, I think they like ensure that you will have a consistent job. So you will have a consistent salary that they pay you.
Yeah.
And then they're in charge of finding your projects. So I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
Maybe they pay you always the same amount, and then they average out and get a bit more income when you have more expensive projects, blah, blah, blah. But it's an interesting setup. And I don't know if you checked any stats on that, but I think it's exploded in the last couple of years because of online work. Yeah. And I've seen that there are a couple companies that are like startups that are creating platforms for you to organize all of your contractees. So everybody that is working for you, not on your salary, not on your payroll, for you to be able to organize that. I mean, I think it's getting more and more popular.
Yeah. And it makes total sense, because I think like building a traditional team sometimes just doesn't make sense for people. I think it's a really cool like work around it. And the stat I have got for this is that 70% of small business owners say delegating work to others was essential to their growth. That's a survey done by QuickBooks in 2023. So 70% of business owners said that, of small business owners, that it was a way that they started out growing into a team by outsourcing rather than, getting like a traditional team and having people on the payroll, like you say. So that's very interesting. And another stat is that 1 in 3 small business owners, which kind of goes back to what we were saying in the beginning, say that they waited too long to outsource or hire help and that it hurt their business. And I see this a lot. I see this a lot with clients that I start working with, and they're struggling. And very often you can see it's because of that. It's because they're still doing everything themselves, and it's just too much. It's too much. And because of that, other things, because they are so busy trying to do it all, other parts of their business start to suffer, and it leads to their business getting hurt. But with these kind of newer models of creating teams, in a lot of places I saw it referred to as the invisible team, because on the outside it might still look like it's just you, but you are outsourcing work. You can still build that strong support system around you without having that stress of actually hiring somebody. So 1 in 3 small business owners say that they waited too long.
It's actually such an interesting topic, because now that it's becoming more and more popular, I feel like it is more ethical in a way. Like I feel like contracting people as a contractee, as the person that's being contracted consistently on lots of different projects, obviously it's a higher stress level, because every 3 to 6 to 12 months you're having to look for new clients.
Yeah.
So contractees, I don't know what we're calling them, but contractees, they have to be kind of entrepreneurial profiles, I reckon, unless they have somebody. I mean, I guess that's why these companies are being born, to do that part for them. So you can just be a technical guy or a graphic designer that's not necessarily great at selling themselves, and to do that job for them. And the more that becomes a thing that more and more people are doing, then more and more offers are going to be out there, and it becomes more ethical because it's not too hard to find your next client. But also, if you're contracting, at the end of the day, that person is not physically on your team, so are they always going to have the company's best interest in mind, and like the time because you always have to spend a lot of time on briefing and explaining. I mean, the work that you do with your clients every time you have a new client, it's hours of work of getting to know them, of understanding how they work, understanding what their missions are, what their mission is, what their values are, what they want to put out there. And that, if you're contracting people, then you're having to do that at each project, unless you're contracting one specific person consistently. But anyway, it's a very interesting setup.
It's a whole world, and I think for some things it makes total sense. For others it can be maybe harder, or maybe, like you say, kind of decreases productivity because of the time that you have to spend doing explaining things. So I think it depends. I also wanted to, because I have come across a lot in my line of work, kind of make a bit of a differentiation between collaborations and contractors, because I think they can both be considered as work that you do as a team with the two different people, but there is a big difference. So with the collaborations, a big part of it is that there is very often both a shared vision and shared benefits. So there's something in it for both parties, and it's not just about the money. There's something else that's at stake. It could even still be a selfish reason. It doesn't have to be this, very inspiring.
So when you say collaborators, do you mean people that aren't necessarily at the same company on the same payroll, but are working together on a specific project? And very often it's unpaid collaborations, I would say. For example, if we were to do a podcast collaboration with another podcast, where neither of us are getting paid, but
in that situation, it would probably be because we have a shared vision about something. If we found somebody who, somebody or a couple of people who had a podcast that also had similar values, similar way of seeing things, or worked in the same field, but maybe had a different opinion, whatever. And then there, the benefit would be obviously that we would both be exposed to each other's audiences.
Followers. Yeah.
So that would kind of be the collaboration. It can be, I think one-off collaborations are very common, but we do have kind of with people that we've worked with in the past, we then often do collaborations as well as the paid work as well, because there will be certain things that just kind of make more sense as a collaboration. And like I say, it normally goes back to there being something in it for you that's still worth it. But what I like about collaborations is that there's a real reason that you're both there. It's because there's something that you share.
Not just because one of them is paying the other. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's collaboration. And then contractor is obviously much more, it's clear, this is what we need from you. There is always, I'm saying always, I feel like it's a word that it shouldn't be used because people can say things, but there's always money in the way, you know, it is something that we're going to pay you X amount for this, and that's contractor. But yeah, I think both are very, both are valuable, and both can be considered something that you could do as kind of work as a team in very different ways. I have another stat, which is quite interesting. It's got to do with the more like contractor side of it. And it's that 58% of companies now work with freelance or contract talent regularly, even when they have in-house teams. So this is when it's not just a one-man show, when it is a company that is slightly bigger than this. Over half of companies are doing this, are contracting out to freelancers or whatever on a regular basis. This was actually a study done by Upwork, which I thought was interesting because Upwork is basically...
Of course.
Yeah. So yeah, in 2023, like you were saying before, it is just becoming more and more
a thing.
Common.
Yeah. A thing you can do. So there's more offer and more demand. So it works. It works better. But yeah, I mean, contracting makes sense. To go back to what you were saying about the difference between contractors and collaborators, or contracts and collaborations. I mean, contracting someone, it's very straightforward. These are the deliverables I expect from you, and this is how much I'll pay you. If you don't reach the deliverables, then you're not getting paid. So you know that you're going to get the work done.
Yeah.
Whereas a collaboration, I think they could be a bit more kind of flexible, maybe not as clear. I mean, it can be clear on the objectives, but you can't really say, okay, I'm not going to pay you because you didn't do what I asked you to do. Yeah. It doesn't work like that. So contracting people for specific tasks and specific projects makes a lot of sense. And I think that's where it comes in to play that so many companies now outsource part of their work, because maybe it's a specific project that you only need, like if you're creating a website, for example. I know that my company, we outsource the website creation. So we contract someone for a couple months or however long that takes, and then because we don't need somebody to maintain the website.
Exactly.
So
there's no maintenance involved. Yeah.
And even if they do need to do some maintenance, we'll pay them a couple hours here and there. But we don't have enough work for that person for ongoing. And I think that's the case for so many technical, okay, we just got to get this project done.
Absolutely. But yeah, I just think it's interesting because when you think of a team, you have quite a narrow, idea of what comes to mind when you say team. But I think in modern businesses, team is so much broader, and I think it's just very cool. There's another stat here that I probably should have read out earlier because we already kind of touched on it, but it's about finding people that align with vision and values. So this one is that over 40% of entrepreneurs say that their biggest challenge when building a team is finding someone who aligns with their vision, which is interesting. And I do understand why that would be the case. I think that was when I was looking to hire somebody, that was my biggest fear. And I think it does come from a place of, like we said before, it's your baby, and you want the work that you've been doing to stay the same, but now somebody else is doing it. So it's kind of the same, that it doesn't feel like it's a team, that it still feels like it's you. It still feels like genuine. So yeah, I think it's a big thing. And yeah, the fact that it
plays
over
a big
40%.
role in, it plays a big role in decision making, doesn't it? I mean, if you're having someone new on the team, especially if you're a small team, you're likely to at least ask their opinion when you're making decisions. And if you don't have an aligned vision, then you're less likely to both have the same point of view on which direction you want to go. Which, I mean, in a way, I guess, like, for example, if we're talking a company has a purely sustainability mission, right? Or we want to make a difference in the world. If you then hire someone that doesn't really care that much, but does care about making the money, that could kind of also work, because then you complement each other and you're like, okay, the planet is great, but we also need to, pay our employees. So we've got to do this, that, and the other. But of course, at the end of the day, it's your company, and you want to make sure that the decisions that are made are in the interest of that original mission. Yeah. So that example aside, you definitely need team members and team culture that align.
Yeah, definitely. You said team culture, and kind of the something we definitely have to talk about is team building, which came up so much when looking up teamwork, and it's actually hilarious. Before that, I do want to talk a little bit about the emotional side of making a team. A little bit what we talked about before, of how it can be so hard to delegate, but that there can also be kind of a weird sense of guilt almost in delegating when you're not used to it. Obviously, when you get into boss mindset and you're there, then it's fine. But I think to begin with, it can almost feel a bit like, I don't know, this weird guilt that I think can almost lead to, as in can be there because of, maybe imposter syndrome. Because you're like, who am I to be the boss or managing
Who am I
somebody?
to tell you what to do?
Yeah. And I think that can be a whole kind of aspect that isn't really spoken about, when people, when you become, it's not something that you kind of think about, I guess is what I'm saying. So when you're hiring somebody and that's all very exciting and you're expanding team, blah, 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 it comes with a whole set of kind of more, emotional side that you don't maybe prepare for. I definitely think leads back to that kind of imposter syndrome and that kind of weird guilt of, who am I?
I mean, I think that's also why it's so important to choose the right people, so that you can have kind of discussions with them and say, okay, this is what needs to get done. What can you take on, and what do you want to take on? If you feel like you're giving tasks to people that they're going to want to work on, then that's one way to kind of get rid of that guilt of giving them work. So like I have a friend that was at his new engineering job, and he was saying to me, I just keep getting tasks that are just so boring, and like and it's because they were giving him the easy tasks, so just sort out this paperwork, or sort out fill in this spreadsheet and whatever. And he was like, oh, it's just so boring, I want some real work.
I didn't go to university for these tasks.
Exactly. And I feel like if you have a conversation with your employee and say, I want you to work on what you enjoy working on, because that's what you're going to be best at, that's what you're where I'm going to get the value out of you, because you'll be more likely to get your head down and get into a state of flow and do some real work, And then if you figure out what they enjoy working on the most, then you give them those tasks, and you can be confident that you shouldn't feel guilty about that you're giving them something to do that's bringing value to the company, that's bringing them satisfaction, and feel less like, who am I to tell you what to do, and more like, how can I give you things that you're going to learn from and that you're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. I also was starting to kind of dive into here about navigating working in a team when it's people who you're friends with, or maybe even possibly family. And then I realized that this is a future episode, so I was like, maybe we can leave this here. But I think that is definitely something...
Such a juicy one.
Such a juicy one, especially when you're kind of thinking of like friendships and being professional when it's a small team. You know, I think when it's a big corporate setting, I think it can be easier just because, of the setting. But when it's a small team, I think like, you don't want to have to be all like, you want people to be able to be themselves. So where does that fine line of kind of, that friendship and professionalism? And when it is a small team, even if you aren't friends to begin with, it will, if you've done your job correctly in hiring, you probably will become friends, or at least have kind of elements of that.
Yeah.
But we don't have to go into this today because we've got a whole episode on this at some point coming. But I think that can also be a very interesting thing to navigate
so
inside
much,
of
so much. And it's things that I've asked like managers or founders that I know around me, and because it's so hard to hire and figure out whether people are good or not from just the interview process, or that they'll get the job done. And if you have friends or family that you know are quality and that they get work done, do you take that risk and hire them, but risk the friendship, it being, or family, anything? But we'll go into that in a whole new episode.
Yes, we'll go into that. So let's move on to kind of the last thing I want to talk about inside of teams, which is team building. So when I was kind of trying to find just different things about team dynamics, this was always coming up time and time again, team building, and how everyone hates it, but how it's necessary, etc., etc. So I thought I would start it off with a little funny story that I found from somebody. So the disaster team building story goes as follows. During a previous job, I worked in a team that was having trouble getting along, so they brought in someone to help us work together as a team. First activity, we had to go around the room and tell each other what we didn't like about each other. We might have also had to add what we did like about each other, but I honestly only remember the criticisms and the people bursting into tears. We went from simply not being able to work together to actively disliking each other in about 30 minutes. Then we ate a boxed lunch and ended the day by filling out personality tests. And honestly, so many of the stories...
Team breaking.
Team breaking, the idea is to be able to get things out in the open, because so many of the stories about team building were this vibe. This is something that I was finding hilarious looking at, because I've never had to do anything like this. I've never been forced to do all this kind of stuff. I did see somewhere an article, someone was talking about team building inside of a smaller company and how it's not a thing that HR has to do. It's something that you, as the founder of the company, has to kind of make sure you do. But I thought that's not what we think of when we think of team building. We do kind of think, at least me as an outsider, someone who's never done it, the stories I was coming across weren't surprising me. It is normally kind of forced retreats and forced fun kind of vibe. They were all horror stories. I tried my hardest to find a nice one to go up next to this, and there weren't any, because people probably don't post about them, so I couldn't. But when the idea behind team building, because I think even for a small company is necessary, isn't kind of that forced fun vibe, which is what normally they go for. And I don't know if it is just because maybe if it is a more corporate setting, it's something that they don't, you are kind of lose touch with your employees. So it does just kind of turn into very generic things that you kind of, I don't know, but that is how it normally ends up. But what it actually is there for is to build trust in the team, because very often, especially with all these new different kind of teams that we're talking about exist in modern businesses, sometimes you don't see everybody that's part of the team on a daily basis.
And honestly, even if you do, like I work in an office, right? I work in an office. I have all the time like 2 to 3 colleagues that are in the office with me. That by no means does that mean that I know them at all. And I actively go the extra mile to like ask them about their weekend and, you know, try and have a bit of a conversation and a laugh. And I know that the people that I do that with the most are then the people that I work with the best, because I get to know them a little bit and I get to know how they're, you know, except for how they react when they're working, which could seem, I don't know, either very stern or very quiet. And if I only see that side of them, then I could think, oh, this person is horrible. Like, give me a smile every once in a while. But if I then have these conversations just about life and about, you know, normal human being conversations where you get to know a little bit about them, then you can see that, oh, it's just that they're a bit shy, because when I talk to them about other things, then they have a brilliant sense of humor. And it makes you be able to interact so much better when you are working on working things.
It's humanizing.
And then if you're a remote team,
you're humanizing your team members. They're not just somebody who has a skill set. They're actually a human being that you know behind them. I've actually had lots of people at university, when they got to know me, they were like, oh, I thought you were like a really serious person. Because I do take classwork and now in my business, very seriously. So they would always see me in class look really serious, and I was taking notes, and then they'd meet me, like they'd get to know me more like on a night out or whatever, and they were like, oh my God, you're a totally different person than I thought you were.
Oh my God, you're actually fun.
What? So and I think when you do kind of build that, it leads to better communication, like you said.
100%.
Like, you know 100%. The person
Which is
more, so you maybe know how to deliver something in a better way. Maybe understand, like you say, when they answer in a certain way, you know how they're saying that. You know, if it's an email or something, you know, oh, that's just how they communicate. Whatever, it leads to so much better trust and communication, which is what makes a good team. So, and that's really the main focus of team building. It just normally gets not brought to life, like you know, organized in a way by HR in bigger companies that don't really reflect that in very strange activities.
I mean, I can see how organizing a fun activity for your team,
everybody, also because whose idea of fun? There are very few activities that I think everybody could consider fun. You know, depending on people, and if you've built your team correctly, it will be lots of different kinds of people. What do you do for it to be a fun, like organized thing that's team building?
I feel like good team building, at least in my experience, is simply putting the members of your team in a situation where they're together, but they're not necessarily having to work. So some of the best team building I've done with my colleagues is when we have a work trip, but then obviously at like whatever time you finish your business fair or you're traveling on the train or whatever, like whatever time you finish working, then you're not going home each to your own homes, but you're still in that place together. And you go and have a meal and you have a chat. And what's, I think team building, the reason they make these big activities and everything is to try and counter the maybe awkward I don't really know what to talk to you about kind of thing, because I do think it's nice to put people in a situation. I always say this for like first dates. Never go on a first date just to a restaurant, because oh my God,
it's so
that's
intense.
so much pressure.
Yeah, absolutely.
So go and
like,
do
always have something to do. Yeah.
Yeah. And then you can talk about what you're doing and not
Yeah.
how many cats have you had? Oh,
Yeah.
you know, like you're searching
Forced
for
conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're doing something like you're I don't know, going from one place to another on the public transport in a city, and you're like lost and you have to figure it out together, and you're not put in the pressure of having to talk to each other about something that you have to make up. You're having a conversation about what's going on, or you're at a movie or whatever the situation may be. It's easier to talk about what you're experiencing
when whatever is happening gives you conversation, rather than being put in a situation where you have to come up with conversation. When you were saying that, I was thinking a really good test for a team would be to put them in an escape room and see how they work to get out. Different teams in the same escape room and see which ones get out fastest. Good team.
There you see the complementarity.
Exactly. But yeah, some stats to kind of talk about why having a good kind of a good trust and communication and a strong team that has kind of that culture is really positive for the company, is that 85% of people say that they'd be more likely to stay with a team where they feel trusted and value. This was a something done by Harvard Business Review in 2022. And another one is that teams that feel connected show a 21% increase in I hate this word, profitability. It's just, I swear I've already messed this word up, but yeah,
I don't think
21% increase. It's crazy. It's so crazy.
And I think it totally is down to communication, like you say. Yeah. It comes down to being able to understand what people are saying to you. Like, I have been working now with my co-founder for over 3 years, and he will send me a non-contextual message that is completely ununderstandable, but I'll know exactly what he's talking about because I just know how his brain works now, you know?
Yeah.
And obviously you can't expect people to have that immediately, but if you try and put them in situations where they have to have conversations, then they're going to get better at that.
Exactly. Someone who's actually, a business, a company that's done a lot of, kind of invested a lot of time and energy into figuring out what makes a good team is Google.
I was going to say Google.
They've done a lot, and basically the number one thing that they found was that people feeling psychologically safe was the most important factor when building a successful team. They have a whole list. There's a lot of interesting things. We've touched on a lot of them already throughout today's episode, but yeah, they spent a lot of time and energy, which I thought was very cool. But that was the most that was their number one thing. Psychological safety is
what does that mean?
Basically that people felt safe in their position, whether that be because they couldn't just be fired from one day to the next, so they had that stability, or maybe they just felt safe within their team, so they felt that they could express their opinions without being judged. Or
I
because they felt like
such a big role.
Yeah, because they felt what they did say was valued and that people would trust them. All of these things, I think in the study, they kind of went into how that was kind of different for different people, but it normally did kind of include those kind of things that we've talked about this in an episode before about how feeling safe in your workplace can really increase your productivity. So I think it comes down to that. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. And basically that the whole reason for doing team building is that a team that feels connected is a team that has fewer misunderstandings because they have good communication. They have more initiative because they feel like they're supported and will be built up by their team members, so they aren't afraid to try new things and express
give an idea and say, hey, I'm really interested in that project that you're working on. Let me know if I can help, and stuff like that you're not going to do if you don't really know if they like you.
Exactly. And because of all these things that we've said, obviously give better results. So team building isn't just corporate fluff. It's just normally carried out in a very fluffy, this is something that we've got to tick off our list, rather than this is something that's actually valuable. I'd be very interested to see how a team building experience, activity, whatever, of Google looks like, as they have put so much. They do value and understand how much team building can give,
and what the important things about it is. It's not just getting everybody in canoes.
Exactly.
It's getting them to have conversations.
It's not forcing people to hang out together outside of work when they already see each other 5 days a week normally, and now you also have to spend your Saturday morning with these people.
That's a really good point. Do you think that team building sessions should be planned within working hours?
I think they should, yes. I feel like
100%.
It's something you're still putting, even if it's not, like we've seen, there's good team building leads to so much more success within the company, like a 21% increase in profitability. So I think spending some of the, 40-hour a week or whatever, obviously it's not something that's done every week, but spending some of that time into team building is going to make the rest of the time that's put into work so much more, what's the word for productivity? Like better. Productive, that's the word. So I definitely don't think, but so many of the stories were also saying stuff like that, like I
find that so ridiculous, because
you finish work at 5 and then they'd arranged a team building activity that goes from 5 till 7, and they're like, I just want to go home, I don't care about
people don't want to be there. If people don't want to be at your team building activity, they're not going to make the most of that team building activity.
Exactly. It's already setting that activity up for failure because people are already going into it with the wrong mindset. Yeah.
If they get a day off work and get to eat nice food for free, then they're going to be in a way better mood. Exactly. So people are going to get to see a way better side of them.
Yeah, exactly.
If everybody's grumpy, nobody's going to want to work with them anymore.
Yeah. But it's just crazy. It's crazy.
My brother's a teacher, and at the school that he used to work at. Oh wow, it's raining a load. At the school that he used to work at, I'm pretty sure that they would take a week a year. So I'm not sure how that works as a teacher, but I think it was counted within their working time. And they would just hang out, like go and do fun stuff and
fun things,
go to like a campsite, and maybe that's not everybody's cup of tea, but they would just have fun for a week, a whole week. That's so cool. And I think that's what you've got to do. You've got to put it in the working hours, because then people are like, oh, I get to just hang out today, so they're in a good mood. Everybody's in a good mood. You get more productive conversations and get value out of whatever budget you're putting into the actual event.
Absolutely. Right, to finish off, we've got some listener questions and dilemmas that we're going to try and answer as best as we can. So, the first question is, I want to delegate, but I always feel like I can do it better / faster myself. How do I get over that? We kind of talked about this a little bit the other day. Off mic. It wasn't part of any episode, but we were talking a little bit about this. And how you can just have that urge to just, do it yourself. I feel like not only are you maybe going to do it better? It is just faster.
Problem is, your
And this is what
time
you're
is
saying,
very
yeah.
valuable. Your time is very valuable, and it should be spent on things that nobody else can do.
Exactly.
If you can delegate part of your work to somebody that maybe the quality of the work or the time that it takes is slightly less efficient, that's still work that's getting done on top of all of the work that you're putting your time into.
Yeah.
So spend your time on what the most value, like if you're really good at writing descriptions on a Instagram post, that's great. But if you're also really good at building the strategy behind the person that's going to tell them, okay, you need to now write this description, that's so much more value for the money that you're spending on your time. You know, your time is money. Calculate how much that's costing you. Is it worth spending your time on that task that somebody else can do? And you can train them to try and get it to up to your standards. So yeah, delegating is important. And you've got
I
to
guess just
accept
have a
that
bigger
people-
picture.
Yeah.
Bigger picture.
Yeah,
in
have a
mind.
bigger picture. And also give other people the opportunity to learn. Like this was something that I actually said to you when we were figuring out, okay, who's doing what on the podcast, is, okay, obviously you're a social media expert and you know how to do things really well, but that doesn't mean that you have to be the one that does it. Like if I do it for a month, probably at the beginning, I won't be as good as you by far. But if I don't start, then I'm not going to learn.
Exactly.
So I will never get up to that quality.
Exactly. And in the long run, even if it does take, I mean, it's what we were saying before at the beginning of the episode about someone who's very skilled versus someone who's eager. With someone who's eager to learn, you have to put in the time and effort. It's an investment, but in the long run, it'll make a big difference and it'll be much better. So yeah. It's not easy though. I think everyone struggles with it, no matter how high up you get. Next question is, what if I can't afford to hire, but I'm burning out doing everything alone? Something we've kind of answered already in the episode, and that there are other options to traditional hiring and team building. Building of a team. So yeah, there's no need to commit to hiring somebody on a payroll. You can maybe look at other options that do work so that you're not burning out. Okay, whenever I tell friends or clients I outsource stuff like admin, branding, or editing, they kind of look at me like I'm lazy or wasting money, but I'm literally doing it to protect my time and energy. How do I stop second guessing my decisions? This is an interesting one. So this is someone who is in kind of a step further from the person who asked the first question. They know that their time is
worth
important
more,
and is worth more, but it's people around them not supporting them, making them second guess.
I mean, if you're confident enough in your decision, then what other people say you should be able to defend. Like, I think obviously that's a very good decision that you've made. If you're able to pay that person external to your team or to your company to do that work, then that's brilliant. And figure out where the most value your time can be put. So if you say to them, to these people that have these very strong opinions that have nothing to, they should
say that you're lazy or wasting money.
Then say to them, yeah, I mean, I could do all of those things, but then I wouldn't have time to do these 3 very valuable things that are
only I could do.
My company, that only I can do, that are taking my company in the right direction, making sure that my team is clear and making sure that my team is working together in the most efficient way. Only I can do that. And if I spend my time doing all of these other things, then I'm not going to do these things properly.
Exactly.
So it's
not that you should have to justify yourself to anybody, but if giving that explanation helps you not second guess yourself, then yeah,
exactly.
You're just...
I mean, I think defending your decisions also leads to you second guessing yourself less.
Exactly.
Because you've had to put it into words.
Cementing
and you've had
it.
to, yeah, you've had to reason behind it. And also, lots of the time, people that are giving these opinions are people close to you. So you don't want to just be like, oh, I don't care what you think, because maybe you do care a lot about what you think. But if you go through clearly why you've made that decision and why it's in your company's best interest and your mental health's best interest, which is your company's best interest, then they will understand, and then you'll be confident in your decisions.
Exactly. And then the last one is, everyone around me seems to be scaling and hiring, but I don't want a big team. I like working closely with one or two people. Is that limiting my business, or is that just how I want to work? Interesting question of, what if I don't want my company to be a huge multiple people, and I do rather just have a small team, but is that stopping how big I could get?
I mean, in a way, yes. Obviously, you're not going to be able to get as much work done if you're a 3-person team than if you're a 100-person team. But whether that's limiting your company in the success sense, it depends a lot on what you're building your company for. If it's simply for profit, then probably. But I was listening to an entrepreneur on some podcast recently, and he was saying that he'd built up this team because he had work to give them and everything, and it led to him burning out because he was putting so much stress on himself to have to pay everybody's payroll and have to manage everybody, and he was spending so much time managing everybody else that he didn't have any time to actually work on the things that he was passionate about, that he'd originally launched the company to do.
Yeah.
And so
which is the story of so many entrepreneurs. It's crazy.
It led to him being unhappy. And what's the point in that case? Like, the definition of success, I think, is definitely to be reevaluated. And
absolutely.
Obviously, you're going to make less of a turnover, but you also have less people to put on the payroll. So maybe at the end of the day, you can make a bigger profit with a smaller team. It just depends on how you manage that team, and depends on your company. But at the end of the day, it's, are you happy in your role? Are you happy with the company situation? Yeah. And if bringing more people isn't what you want to do, then don't do it.
Exactly. If you like working closely, like you say, with one or two people, and that's what you enjoy and how you enjoy it, if that leads to a sustainable business model for you, it doesn't, that is success. It doesn't have to be even a 10-person team, which isn't a huge team, but if that is too much, then it's too much, and that's not how your business is going to look, and that's fine. But I feel like, especially when other people around you are doing it, it can be a bit like, should I be doing that? I think that's everything in life. But yeah. So to finish off, I just did a little kind of roundup of what leads to a successful team. And as I was doing it, I was like, I feel like what we say about all the different topics that we talk about. So there's clarity. It always depends on these things that I'm about to say.
Communication.
Well, literally. So we've got clarity, clear roles, responsibilities, and boundaries. We've talked about boundaries. We talked about it a lot in an episode. I think it was the one about how to not get screwed over. A lot about boundaries and contracts and setting those clear roles, responsibilities. So clarity in those things. Second one is communication. You guessed it. Just having good communication within your team is always just going to lead to more better success. Work. Shared values, even if people are external to the company, when you're working with people as a team, having shared values, so it's just going to make everything smoother.
Can I just add in there?
Yeah.
A shared value can be make the biggest profit possible.
Oh,
you know?
yeah, absolutely.
Like, just make sure
Absolutely.
everybody's aligned on whatever that thing is. It can be
Exactly.
whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. I think because a big reason is because when you have similar values, then your list of things that you want to achieve are going to be the same. And the reason that you're doing things are going to be the same. So you're working towards the same goal. So, yeah. And the last one I put, which this is more specific to team building, is rituals and connection. So that team building, basically to find a way to make sure that your team is valuing each other as humans and not just as, someone that you work with, and that's it. Just because having that trust and everything can lead to much more success, as we've talked about today. And that can be anything. It doesn't have to be the cheesy forced fun activities that you think.
Yeah. It can be Croissant Tuesday.
Exactly. It can be anything.
Everybody takes 15 minutes on Tuesday at 10 a.m. to have a coffee and a croissant and to chat.
And to chat about anything. If it isn't work related, then even better. Work related things off the table. And make sure that I think it's just that human element to see that the person. Do you remember the first time when we had, I don't know if it was our version of like prom at high school, and the first time that we saw our teachers properly and hung out with our teachers outside of school and saw them dancing, it was like, what? This person's human? They're not just a teacher? Well, yeah, to not have that in your team, it's not, the person isn't just their job, there's a person behind the job. So to have that. So that's it on team building and creating a successful team. We would love to hear from you if you have any awkward or funny situations that you've been in your team, or if you've had to do a really weird thing as a team building activity. We'd also love to know just what your company does for team building, and if you love it, we'd love to know what that is. And get in touch.
Yeah, I'd like to know if anybody's ever had to plan a team building event.
Oh, that would be a good one.
I feel like that's really interesting. Like it's so much pressure. Yeah. To have to figure out, okay, what is everybody going to enjoy?
Yeah. The people, what can I announce that we're doing as team building that people aren't going to roll their eyes at, basically. So we would love to know. You can send us a message on any of the social medias where We Will Manage Podcast everywhere, I believe. And you could also send us an email at wewillmanagepodcast@gmail.com. And we also have a website where you can send us a little message on there. So many ways to get in touch. We'd love to know. And we might even make a short, one of our mini episodes about it if we get enough people writing in. So
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to today's episode, and see you next time. What do we have next time, Saoirse?
I believe next time, are we talking about, I'm not going to say.
I don't know.
Yeah, so next week's topic will be company team structures. So once you've built your team, how do you set them up?
So we have got a couple of episodes coming up, like we said at the beginning, that are kind of around this topic. And I think this is really important because it's the basis of success for the company and the business, and making work life be a bit more enjoyable. So we will see you next week.
See you then.
Bye.